everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Xtra Mile podcast. We're excited to have you guys here with us, but I'm also extremely excited for our guest. To my left, your right, is Devin Trout, who is an incredible individual. And what you're going to see on this podcast is a lot of people that have a business influence on me and a professional influence on me. And that's really awesome because they've left this impression. I feel really grateful to have those relationships, but I feel blessed to know Devin. Devin and I used to work together, and the accomplishments that he's had since that time has been amazing. The family that he comes from is incredible. I've been really impressed by everything that they encompass as far as values and just their character traits. It's incredible. So I'm going to take just a second, let him introduce himself, and just say a little bit more about what you're doing today, and then we'll kind of dig deep into the route that you've taken.
All right. Well, as he said, my name is Devin Trout. I'm originally from Delaware. I was originally a window and siding salesman. Rock on. I live in Nashville now. I did a lot of years. I toured playing guitar and did pop music, but I always wanted to do country. And so I live in Nashville now. The short, long version of it is I'm touring with some country acts, and it's been an incredible experience so far, man. I'm just taking it a day at a time.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
that's really cool.
Dude, let's go. I'm excited to get into this. This is gonna be fun.
Before the cameras even started rolling, we really had some great conversation already. So I know this is gonna be a great podcast. So one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit is, like, you know, when I first met you, and I was wrong for this, right? I kind of had this like no big deal mentality. Like, you told me that you played guitar, and like for me, I was like, oh, big deal. My brother plays guitar, you know, my sister played guitar. So like, I guess I never gave you the benefit of the doubt, and I was never like, I never allowed the idea that you were incredible at guitar to enter into my mind. Now when I see you do your little riffs on Instagram and stuff, I'm just like blown away, and I just listen to it. But what's really cool is, like, from that moment, right? I think the last time we were talking about it earlier, the last time I saw you was at the mall, and at the time you were working at like shoe department, and so like you've definitely paid your dues in those different areas. But tell me, because we haven't even had this conversation yet, so this could be all organic. Tell me, from the last time I saw you at shoe department, how did what you're doing today like kind of play out, and how did the different opportunities for some of those bigger names come to fruition?
We could take the whole episode up on that story. But so the long story short is I grew up, and you know, we've talked about my family's history, and I grew up in church, and always, you know, playing at church, playing on church platforms, and because of that, I got into gospel music, which was very far from what I wanted to do. I wanted to play country all growing up because I was, you know, Delaware boy. I'm in, country music. And so I randomly got into gospel. I did that for a long time, a lot of my teenage years while I was working at shoe department and while I was working, you know, selling or doing door-to-door. But I did that for a long time, and just years of keeping my nose to the grindstone, I happened to meet a young lady named Jasmine Sullivan, and she was kind enough to give, you know, a young guitar player a job who probably didn't deserve it.
Really?
And so I spent a lot of time, like a couple of years on the road with her, man. And it was just me and her for a long time, acoustic. And that was my first, that was my big break for the music industry. That was the biggest gig that I've ever done. And so after that, I found out that John Legend was looking for a guitar player, and so I went in and auditioned for that and ended up getting that gig and did that for a number of years. And then directly after that, like I said, this is the quick version. We can get into any of this.
And I'll come back to some of it, but I want to hear this because this is really, I mean, it's really interesting. John Legend, dude, I mean, that's amazing, dude.
That was a great world to be in, man. Such a great guy.
Yeah.
But from there, him and Sam Smith had the song together. The song "Let Me Down" that was out at the time, and John was getting ready to have him and Chrissy were getting ready to have a kid, and Sam's tour was really just picking up, and we met a couple years before that, before he was really even famous, and he happened to remember me, and we were in Italy doing a co-headline show, and he offered me a job backstage, on the spot, and it was like, just walks up to me and started talking. He goes, "What are you doing over the next couple of years?" And I was like, "I don't know why." And so he said, "I want you to come play for me." He said, "My guitar player's ready to get off the road," and he said, "I want you to come play for me." And I was like, "Done, man." And so I did.
That's amazing, man.
And years later, when that ended, I hadn't really made many connections because I'd been doing that for so long in any other world. So I talked to my wife, and I was like, I've always wanted to play country music. I'm not getting any younger. I said, might as well try my hand at it. So we picked up and moved to Nashville.
Dude,
and
this is so awesome.
We're back here now, and visiting family and visiting old friends.
Yes, that's right.
That's what I love about this, man. It's such an unlikely friendship.
It's
so crazy,
man. But that's what I find that like especially the people that have played a significant role in my life have always been the most unlikely of
Absolutely.
people or sources or even like circumstances. Like me meeting that person was like, the stars aligned and everything happens for a reason. We'll get into that. Now I want to go deep into some of this, but real quick, I want to talk about so was the door-to-door thing like your first job, or was it close to?
Yeah, it was pretty close to I think I'd worked at Chick-fil-A before that, maybe.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, again, a lot of what you're talking about, like the values and stuff like that, like plays into like where you'll accept employment, right? And so that makes sense. Now, with that being said, the door-to-door sales thing, I know for me, conditioned me for a world of no's, right? Like today when somebody tells me no, it's different than before that door-to-door position.
Absolutely.
How did working door-to-door and going door-to-door impact you long-term and kind of condition you think, for the world?
What's crazy is you're talking about that world of no's. And I can remember having the conversation with our boss, and he's like, "Dude, your numbers are down, man. You got to get your numbers up."
Yeah.
And just taking that and being like, "All right, got to get my numbers up. This job does not matter, but I got to get my numbers."
Yes,
it's like one of those. I'm a teenager.
Yeah,
it's like, I got to get my number. And so I did, man. I worked my tail off, and like I got my numbers up, and like that was one of the first times I can remember just seeing a result of hard work and like, not that I didn't know that this happened, but it was like the first real life experience I'd seen where I'm like, holy crap, I got a paycheck that has more money in it now because I worked my tail off.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like this. This is good. I can do that. And that taught me it may not be the perfect job.
Right.
But you know what? If you work hard at it, you can make a game out of it. And we always had fun when we went out together. I mean, it was always fun, man.
Well, and you got to find joy in everything,
exactly.
right? And I tell people all the time, because they might work like a grunt job that they don't really like, but they have a bigger vision. And I'm like, okay, well then if you can't do what you love, you have to love what you do, right?
Exactly.
So you have to convince yourself that this is playing a huge part in your overall vision.
Yes.
And that's extremely important to understand, but also to then find joy in what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
You see a lot of these motivational speakers, and they're like, listen, if you're waiting for Friday every week, you're not in the right job. You know what I mean? And so that's really cool. There's a couple of things that I want to touch on, and I'm going to try to keep this as organized as possible, but we're going off the cuff because that's just how we are, so that's cool. So that's really neat. I think that the door-to-door job really does condition people for no's, which is, like you said, like we said, it's a world of no's. I think that depending on what you're trying to accomplish in life, and if you have that vision early enough and that self-awareness early enough, that door-to-door sales could put you in a position to have extreme success later by getting conditioned through knocking on doors and having dogs like run at the door.
Oh my goodness. The amount of dogs, like large dogs that we ran from. Oh God, Nick.
But it's conditioned me, like, so now a no is nothing to me because I know how to get past it. If I truly believe, right, like that I'm the right solution for the situation, I know how to get past that for that person, because I also feel the responsibility to do so.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly what you're saying is like, and not necessarily that it did teach me to work. Not that I didn't learn the power of like accepting a no,
right?
But like that no, for me always, I'm sure it meant something different for you, but for me it was like, okay, how hard do I have to work to get the yes? Like, because you can clearly, we're talking about roofing, you can clearly look up and see that this person's roofing is super jacked up.
Like,
and
what are you waiting for, man?
What do I got to do to get you? Yeah, exactly. How nice do I have to be to you? Like, and it's like you learn, and that's a very shallow point to the point that we're actually making. But it taught me so much, man. And it's like so crazy that that's something me and you both gleaned from, is that job.
It is, man. It is. It's so funny because I can think about, and I think I even commented on one of your Instagram videos one day about like, a long way from, jumping over snowbanks to get to doors and stuff like that. But what's really cool about it too is I think, like you were saying, like for the first time, at least for me, my pay was directly impacted by the amount of work I was willing to put in right now. Like long term, I think everybody understands that. The harder you work, the more you'll get promoted, and like this, that's a long term. You're right. But the reality is like that job, right? We could work our tail off and make a decent amount of money right then, depending on our work ethic and our dedication to the performance. So, the other thing I want to talk about, and we're going to get into the John Legend and Sam Smith thing too, because that's really cool. But I want to actually skip all that for a second, because one of the things that I have really grabbed and held onto over the past couple of years is just the pursuit of happiness over anything else, right? And so like when you say to me that you were on tour with John Legend and Sam Smith, and then you had this self-awareness to know that you wanted to do country music, that's what makes you happy, right? And that's what you were going to pursue, even though, right, and I'm assuming here, I assume that if you tried hard enough, you could get back into some stars lineup and be in that limelight, right?
It depends. You could. I mean, you definitely. It's again hard work. I mean, you work hard enough if that's what you want, and you work hard enough. I did it for years and found out that was not what I wanted.
So compared today, right? You're married, Kirsten, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so now you guys are in Nashville.
Yep.
But how is life? Like, how is your peace? How is your happiness today versus when you were on the road with Sam Smith and John Legend?
Man,
right?
Honestly, like I've never been, and this is honestly from this year. I've learned more this year than I've ever learned, I think, in my life. And this is a great year and a great time in my life for us to be talking about this. I'm probably more content and happier than I've ever been. Making probably less money than I've made on the road before. And the reason I say that, it's still a very, good living. I'm not complaining, but I'm definitely making less than I was when I played country music. I mean, pop music, but I'm happier at the end of the day. I can enjoy my life. I'm not walking on eggshells. I can be myself, and that's the great thing about. That was the great thing about country music that I didn't even know going in. I knew it was a big family thing. I knew everybody loved everybody, and we all looked out for each other. But I didn't realize how much until like we can get into the story. But one of the bosses that I had, that I still have, collapsed on stage, and people like gathered around us and was like, they were like, after it all happened, they were like, whatever you need. And it was all our peers, like our guys that are touring with other groups. That I had guys reach out to me this week, and they're like, I've met these guys, two people. I've met these guys twice, and they both invited me to Thanksgiving at their house. And they're like, hey, if you guys are free, come on over. You got nothing to do. I'm like, this is amazing. Like this will never happen in LA. This would never happen in New York. Like this is awesome.
It's a different world.
And so it's just man. I mean, it's taught me so much about myself this year.
And you find out, like in moments like that, right, which you obviously never want those things to happen. You never want somebody to collapse on stage. But you really do find out, right, how big is this support? How deep is it? How authentic is it, right? And like those are the moments that really tell you who you've got in your corner. What's interesting about what you said though is like I'm making less today, but I'm happier, right? So. I've been in business for a little while now, and there were times where I was working from like 5 a.m. to like 11 p.m. I was literally up and out before my kids got up for school, and I was home after they were in bed for school already. And so I was working my tail off. I wasn't happy. I was making decent money, but I wasn't happy. Now, I'm in a similar business still, right? But I've been able to leverage relationships a lot differently now that I've gotten a lot of my time back. I take my daughters to school every day now, and I'll tell you.
That's the biggest part, man.
Listen, I'm telling you right now, those girls think that that's for them. Like that I'm
that's
like,
for you.
Like that's for
what,
me.
Exactly.
Like, that
dude.
starts my day off right every single day. And so for me, like that's the part. Like if we're not in pursuit of that, then we've got this twisted. Like if we're not in pursuit of happiness over the dollar, then we've got it twisted, man. And so,
Absolutely.
so that's really cool. And I want to go back too, because, you know, you know, basically going into the country, right? And that's more of your roots and your family and things like that. That made you feel whole, right?
Yeah.
When you were on tour with Sam Smith. Oh, let me tell you this story real quick, okay? So this is how I found out that you had even gotten to that point, right?
Yeah, because we hadn't like, we'd been friends for a long time, but we hadn't like conversed in a very long time.
No, well, I mean, you know, you've been all over the world. It's hard to catch up with you. It's like Carmen Sandiego.
Oh, gosh. I'm not that pretty.
So, no, but what was really interesting is I just ended up, right? I have a roofing business now, and I ended up at this dining room table, right, in this house in Dover, and I'm having conversation, and I make no connection to the last name, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and again, you know, I mean this with every bit of sincerity in my heart. Like, I've never met a family like your guys's. Like, I mean that 100%.
I appreciate
that. I
that.
was touched so much by my few interactions with Mr. Trout, Wayne, right?
Wayne, yeah.
Your grandfather, that, like, just like we could sit here and talk all day, I could sit here all day, right, with you and talk. I would sit there all day and listen with him. That's just the, immediate impression I had. Just a great family. Anyway, talking with Mrs. Trout, Janet, right? And I'm at the table, and she's talking to me about what's going on. I think I told her about my kids. She went on to tell me a little bit about her family, and brings up her grandson, Devin, who is actually the lead guitarist for, I think, Sam Smith at the time.
They probably showed you the same video they show everybody.
Yeah. And you had already done the John Legend thing, so I was like, you've got, and that's the moment that, like, I was like, he told me he played guitar. Why did I listen? Like, I wanted to hear him play guitar. Like, so
hey, that's all right, man.
Yeah, that was like the moment that realization came to me was at your grandmother's dining room table, and I said, damn, he did say he played guitar.
Dude, and the crazy thing is, you said that, you were talking about, you looked at me and never thought anything about it. Same, man. Yeah. I never expected this. I never expected we would be sitting here all these years later.
Well, talking about this, you know what? It comes with evolution of a person too,
yeah,
right?
Man.
Like I definitely, the person I am today is a totally different person than that guy.
Yes, absolutely.
As you know, all your experiences have caused you to grow as well. But what's really, and I want to get back to it. So that was the moment that I realized that you were, you know, doing what you were doing. But I probably had already been in the house for 2.5 hours, like talking about everything but the roof.
Yeah.
And actually, Wayne had just had, I think a couple months before that, he had a stroke. Yeah. And so we didn't end up doing business then, because I wanted to do everything I could to make sure that, like, we were all on the same page. So I don't think it was until like 10 months later. And I'll tell you, it was the most amazing thing.
Wow.
Right after his stroke, and you know this better than I do, of course, he really couldn't communicate nearly as much and or as well as, you know, I knew he could.
Yeah.
And about 8 to 10 months, by, you know, whatever miracle people want to, you know, assign that credibility to, he was like one of the sharpest people that I've ever spoke to in my life, in like an 8 to 10 month period of time.
That's what I like. I love that you said whatever credibility, because that's I use that term a lot.
Right.
Whether you want to say it's the universe, God, whatever you want to say it is.
As long as you believe in something.
You can't say it wasn't something. Yeah.
But it was, and it was such a world of difference communicating with him then, and I mean, just a wonder, like, so much of an influence. Like, I could have sat in that house, and they probably would have charged me rent for as long as I would want to stay, and just act like a sponge and just hear it out. So, you know, we're gonna get into it a little bit, because I actually have. This is how you know. This is how you know I'm not messing around, right?
Dude, I saw these sitting over there.
This is the just a couple of the books that your grandmother
she's got
has
quite a few
published and written, and there's some gems in here that are pretty awesome.
Is this the one with weird pictures of me in it? There's a couple
of
some strange pictures of me.
I don't know if I can identify it as you or not, but there are some pictures in here, which but really cool. Tell me a little bit about, like, what your family, like, what you know of what your family was able to do, like, and some of the key and significant things, like some of the things that you think and find the most interesting, because they've made a huge impact all over the world, like not just here, which they've got a great impact here as well, but But tell us a little bit about that and the impression that your family has just had on you and like,
Man,
what it's meant.
I hope I get some of this straight, and I also hope my grandmother doesn't listen to this and correct me. But so her and my grandfather met when my grandmother's family was missionaries in Jamaica. So they were, yeah, dude. I mean, like we spent. I always thought we just got to go to Jamaica as kids, and I was like, this is awesome. We get to live in Jamaica as we're little kids, and we get to do this. This is amazing. Come to find out, they were actually, while we were hanging out on the beach, they were all doing like pretty strenuous church work, and we didn't. None of the kids knew because we were all so young. You know, we'd go to church on Sundays, but we didn't see all the weeks where they were out working at the church, and they were training their pastoral staff, and they were training their, you know, they were doing everything that comes along with founding a church and working in a church, and we never saw any of that until later. I mean, I think I was on a plane coming from like LA or something back to Philly, and I sat next to a Jamaican woman, and she knew who my grandmother was.
Oh wow!
And it was the most random thing. And I mean, it wasn't like a deep conversation. She just, oh yes, I know Miss Janet. Like she knew exactly who Miss Janet was, and I was like, wow, man. That's when it sank in for me. I was like, wow, they've really made an impact. Like they've done the church. They've started the church in I think might have more than one in Jamaica. My grandmother still works with colleges over in the Holy Lands,
in Israel, right?
Yeah, Israel. She's got a Bible college that they started here in Louisiana, I believe. I mean, just endless things. But the reason that they did all that was not like for personal gain. I mean, it wasn't to make money, because God knows they probably didn't make any money off of it.
Right.
And it was to show people love and like give people hope, and like people that are desperate, like people, we've all been in a desperate place before, and I'm thankful that I've known where to turn, and I could, when my grandfather was alive, I knew I could always pick up the phone and call him, and he would not sugarcoat it, and he wouldn't bullshit me. He would tell it to me exactly how it was, and I knew, as much as that hurt, that's what I needed to hear, and I could get off the phone with him and say, all right, I know what I got to work on. And I mean, they could do that to anybody. Yeah. And
I could tell you from
experience. And I mean, just that kind of interaction with them. I mean, of course, I grew up getting whippings from them, and spending Christmas with them. But that kind of interaction with them is when I can remember, being just lost, not knowing what to do. Brand new to Nashville, didn't know anybody. Had barely a touring gig, and I called him and, Pop, I don't know what to do, man. It's not working. Well, what have you been doing with your time? Well, I'm sitting at home. And, well, that's your problem. You need to get off your butt and go do something. And it's like, go get a job, go do something.
Go knock on doors, right?
And I'm like, yeah, go knock on doors, sell some siding or something, man. And so he's just never afraid to tell me how it was, and that translated into me marrying a woman who's not afraid to tell me how it is, and she's a lot. This is a weird statement to say, but she's a lot like my grandfather in the sense that she doesn't sugarcoat it, and neither did he, man. And my grandmother still doesn't. She's still around.
It's awesome, and we need that kind of balance in our life, though.
Yeah,
man, for
dude,
sure. Because if you're anything like me, man, I'm a little bit of a risky guy, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
my wife will be the one to tell me like, hey, listen, we need to, let's take another look at this before we go all in on this one. I'm like, oh,
so we're not gonna spend $100,000 on this right now. Okay.
Yeah. No, so it's really, really interesting because in my original, the reason that I met your grandmother and your grandfather was for business. Yeah. And we just immediately linked. I mean, the very next meeting I brought my wife out there. Dude, that's awesome. That's I love that. Kind of and I remember when my guys were out there doing the job, and just how kind they were, and and just they treated everybody, like the person that cleaning up the trash on the job site, they treated with the same respect and consideration and kindness that they treated me with, and my my wife, and that is, and we ended up staying at the villa in Jamaica. That's awesome. Yes, that's amazing. But that was it was a really
great
experience. Yeah. Well, and to just kind of put an exclamation point on what you've already said about your grandparents in general is that we had she was at the airport to meet us in Jamaica when we got there, like, and to make sure everything was okay. I brought my whole team down there. Like, it was really neat. Like, the people that were working on her home, on her project, were also in Jamaica with us.
I love
so
that,
like,
man.
it was so cool to have that experience. But yeah, I mean, when I was down there, some of the local people were telling me like how much they had done, and like, again, referring to her as Miss Janet, and like, that's an amazing. It's just it's a really cool foundational part of your life that you know, I think is oftentimes taken for granted, right? Like, so many people that do have that kind of support and that kind of family end up doing all the wrong things. So I know from experience how proud your grandfather was of you when he passed, and how proud your grandmother is to this day.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
So it's really cool to see all of that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this name of this podcast, right, is the Xtra Mile podcast. So when things you talked about how like the connection with Jasmine Sullivan came. Can we go back to that a little bit and just talk about like what all was involved into convincing Jasmine Sullivan to give it a chance?
Man, that's so. When I got the call for that, I was actually just doing like some like cover band stuff. Like, I was doing some gospel thing, a lot of gospel stuff, but the what I was trying to break into was like doing the cover band thing, and you know, maybe getting into the R&B thing, because I was trying to kind of make connections, and I didn't really know what it was. And so I was doing a cover band thing, and I was at a rehearsal, and it was just I had been like praying about it, and I was like, you know, God, I think I'm ready for the next step. I don't know what it is, but I'm ready for it. And just nothing was happening, and randomly I get a phone call from a guy named Adam Blackstone, who's one of the like #1 music directors in pop music. It was crazy that he was calling my phone.
Wow.
And I was like, this is amazing.
Did you think it was a prank or anything like that? Like,
at first I kind of did, yeah. I was like, yeah, this is funny, but like, let's be serious. How much do I owe you? Like,
who's this? Craig, is that you?
Exactly. And so, he called me, and he goes, listen, man, you know, we're looking for a guy, you know, for this girl. I don't know if you've heard of her, and we need a guitar player, and I've talked to a couple people. They tell me you're the guy for the job, and I was like, I am. I don't know if I can play her music, but I am the guy for the job. I can promise you that.
Sign me up.
This site, yeah. Where do I sign? And so,
did you ever find out who it was that told him that?
Dude,
or
it was actually a guy who's still a really good friend of mine. The one that introduced me to the John Legend gig was John's music director. He's the one that had put my name in for it, and I'd met him years before that. So he put my name in for it, and the crazy connection to all that was the background. One of Jasmine's background singers was also John's background singer. John's music director was dating that background singer.
Oh, wow.
And he was also coming out and kind of like, because he has like super big heart, like super giving person, hard worker. He would come out and like help tech at Jasmine's shows for the keyboard player. So it was like, we weren't even paying him. I mean, like, he would just come out and help. And so we got to know each other through that. And one night in LA, we had done a show, and we were all eating dinner, and Natalie, the girl that was singing backgrounds, she was like, yeah, you know, he's having a hard time right now. He's just trying to wrap his head around John's looking for a new guitar player. And I was like, what? Does anybody care to mention that to me? I'm like, I happen to be looking for a gig, you know? And so, because Jasmine was slowing down, she wasn't doing as much anymore. So I ended up going to do the audition. I auditioned with like 10 other guys in New York, and then they auditioned a bunch of other guys in LA, and
really,
they hit me back up, and they were like,
"Do you know the total number? Like how many or
I think it was around like 30. There was like 30 guys, yeah, because there was I think 20 in LA, and there was like 10 or 12 here. And it was just, dude, it was the most grueling like month of my life, because they didn't call me back for a month. Like, I did the audition, and I was like, well, I didn't get it. That's all it is. And so I had a couple of things coming up with Jasmine, did those couple of dates, and just started working at my dad's church, and was like, well, I guess I'll, you know, try again next time. Because that was the second time I'd auditioned for him. The first time was a massive group audition. There was hundreds of people there. Yeah. Wow. And so, excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
So I did the audition, and a month goes by, and I just had put it out of my head. I was like, I didn't get it. And one night, I get a FaceTime from John's music director, and it's him and the background singer. And they were like, congratulations, you're part of the band. And I was like, you got to be kidding. I lost my mind. And that was right when that was right before I had started thinking about proposing to my now wife. And I was kind of telling God, I was like, all right, I'm going to have to make a lot more money, if I'm going to be supporting a wife and a family. Sure. So, I mean, and then that comes along. I was like, all right, well, I mean, if we're going to be real, I'm going to need a house. And everything just started falling into place. I was like, well, dang, I guess I'm going to marry her now, well, ready or not, man.
That is so incredible. And so still, man, like, there's the pictures on your Instagram of you on stage and like man. John Legend and like that's so unreal, right? Like,
thank you.
Out
man.
of all those people, they picked the little blonde-headed guy from
Delaware, man. Who asked that guy to come? Nobody asked me to show up at the audition. I just did.
So let me ask you this again, going back to the name of the podcast. Everything in my life, like of any significance, aside from like the relationships we talked about, and even some instances the relationships, has come because I've done something of some significance and took a leap, right?
Yeah.
Into something that I really, probably if I stayed within my comfort zone, would have never gotten, right?
Absolutely.
So is there anything about the audition or the fact that maybe the first time you didn't get it or anything like that that stood out to you, or did you later learn that stood out to them that might have been different than anybody else or different than you would have typically done?
On the first audition, I learned that you don't go to group auditions. Yeah. The second one, I learned a lot about honesty in that audition because at the time I wasn't comfortable singing background vocals, which is for what I do now is a very important thing, which I wish I had learned years ago, but now I do it and it's something I've learned. It's I don't really think about it anymore.
Yeah.
But back then it was something that I was like, I'm not good at. I don't want to try and ruin my chances of getting a guitar gig by messing up a background vocal audition. And so they were looking for a guitar player that played guitar and sang backgrounds. And so I walked in the audition, and I think I still have the video. They sent me the video from the audition because they filmed from the time you walked in, from the time you walked out. And I just walked in, and they go, all right, well, what are you auditioning for today? And I said, I'm auditioning for guitar. And they said, guitar and vocals? And I said, nope, just guitar. And they said, why not vocals? And I said, because I'm honestly not comfortable. I feel like it would compromise my playing, and I can do one or the other, and if you want me to do one, I'll do one. But I'll
do it great.
I can't do both.
Yeah.
And that's what I told them, and they were like, "All right, go ahead." Man. And I just was dead honest with them in the audition, and they were like, "All right." And that was one of the things they were like, they loved your honesty. And John was like, "We can hire another background singer. Just get another background singer, hire this guy."
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's what they did, man. And that was one of the like key moments where I was like, you know what? That moment of honesty got me further than any lying, anything I've ever lied about in my life.
Right.
And just that started me on like a path of like trying to be brutally honest, which is something that I've wanted to try, and my wife's helped me with that. But that was one of the biggest lessons I learned. Anyhow, back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
The biggest lesson I've learned about my career is just like timing, and that was this year. That's been the last 2 years, because I moved to Nashville and had like no leads, I knew a guy that played for a Southern gospel artist, and that was it. I didn't know anybody else. And coming back, this comes full circle. This is gonna blow your mind, because this is actually something I've thought about before you even reached out to me about this. This is something I thought about, because we were talking about the working at Russell Anthony and right. the kind of no conditioning thing.
Right.
That whole experience I reflected on last year for a while, actually, because I spent the majority of 2018. I was doing some touring dates, but I wasn't making a lot of money. I wasn't touring with any big artists or anything. Spent the majority of it sitting across the table, having coffee with other musicians and networking and meeting other people, and just knowing how to, not being a salesman,
right,
but knowing how to talk to another person. And that talk, I learned so much about that, getting doors slammed in my face and people asking me why the F I'm on their property. And, it's like you learn how to talk to people, make people comfortable in a conversation. And Dude, it's so crazy that we find ourselves sitting here in these two chairs, because that's something I thought about last year before me and you had even reached back out and started talking again. That's something I thought about last year, and now that we're sitting here talking about this, it's like, wow, super full circle moment.
Always. So what's really cool about, there's a couple of things that you said that I really like, right? And it was like, you know, so I've started being brutally honest with myself, but like I was always honest. And here's what I would like to say about that. Like, I do think that you were always honest. Like, if I asked you something, you would tell me the truth about it, right? But were you always being brutally honest with yourself? Were you always like, and so those are the part that people like don't understand. Like, it's not that you're a liar. Yeah. But it's that, you know, like sometimes you got to say, hey, listen, am I truly who I think I am? Is what's happening as great as I currently think it is? And so it's like about understanding all of that and that self-awareness. The other thing is like you talking about the time around the table with the other musicians. I'm huge on relationships.
Yes.
A good influence in my life is a guy named Chaz Wilson, who's also a business partner of mine. And one of his quotes is, "You are only one relationship away from changing your life." Right?
Yes.
And that is so true.
That's absolutely true.
I was talking with another guy who I do business with this morning, and 4 or 5 of us do business all the time.
Yeah.
We met on a softball team 5 years ago. Like,
that's awesome.
Like, what if we didn't start that softball team?
Yeah.
And we do tons of business today. One of them was like literally my best friend today. And we met on a softball field. So it goes to tell you that like that part of it is huge.
Yeah.
But you also said, hey, I'm going to go forth with just the idea. I just want to communicate with you guys. I just want to build these relationships. And it goes back to what you were talking about with your grandmother and grandfather, right?
Yeah.
Look at all of what they did for the world with no handout of what's in it for me.
Absolutely, man.
Right?
Absolutely.
So like when you now have those conversations and it's organic and it's, you know, full of honesty and it's authentic, then the opportunities, which you don't have your hand out for, will come anyway, just by pure default eventually.
Absolutely.
But it's like people got to have more of a long-term vision with the relationships that they create.
Yes. And that's the thing is people, like, especially our generation now, man, and even a little bit younger, they literally walk up to meet you with their hand out. And it's just like, man, I spent a lot of time, and I'm fully guilty of that. Like, I've done that before, just walking up to people at a coffee meeting and being like, hey, I need work. What can you get for me? Mm-hmm. And that was a mistake that I made. And I learned that lesson the hard way by somebody being like, yeah, dude, you can't approach everybody. No. That's not how you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I struggle with, because that's the saying about Nashville is it's a relationship town. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the band Little Big Town. Mm-hmm. That's where the name came from. It's a little big town. It's about Nashville. And it's such a relationship town that if you screw somebody over, everybody's going to hear about it in the next 12 minutes. If you do something great, everybody's going to hear about it in the next 12 minutes. So it's a small town. Like, it's a big town, but it's a small town.
Yeah, I was supposed to go a couple of years ago. We talked about this earlier. And I can't wait to go to Nashville. I think it's an awesome town.
You have to.
But so it's so cool because we just part of our training here, we do like a book or something like that every now and then, and we just did the Go Giver. And in the Go Giver, it's saying, hey, listen, go forth with a mindset of contribution instead of go getter, right? You're a go giver. Find out what you can do to help other people, and then just by default, the things that you think you need right now will work themselves out. They just will. And it's like you were talking about earlier, depending on no matter what you believe in, as long as you believe in something, if you put enough good into the world, enough good will come back.
Exactly.
And so I think that's played a huge role in the opportunities that you've had in your life too, right? Because I don't think the same person with the same level of guitar talent who didn't have the right values and character would have got those opportunities. I don't know any better, but to just form that assumption.
You're right, man. I mean, that's the biggest thing, like, because you spend so much time, and this is like not more of a vain thing, but this is like, you spend so much time, it comes back to relationships every time. You spend so much time with your bandmates on the road. You're on a metal tube going down the highway every single day. You have to like those guys, and you have to have a good relationship with them. The guys that I'm on tour with have seen me cry. They've seen me laugh. They have seen me at my most broken point and at my highest point. And I've known them for 6 months. I mean, you spend so much time around these guys, and I don't know if you know who Derek Trucks is, but he's an incredible guitar player. Absolutely legend. Okay,
if you say that,
I'll use the term John Mayer then, because everybody knows who John Mayer is.
Yeah.
he said, he made the statement, if John Mayer was a dick, he would get fired off at any gig in Nashville, no matter how good he is.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. I mean, if you're a jerk and you don't know how to cultivate a relationship and you don't know how to, you know, to make people feel loved and just be a nice person, be a good person, you're not gonna make it anything you do.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to work with you.
And I can't use a guitarist reference that way, but sports. I mean, look at Antonio Brown. I don't know how much you follow football, but
not a lot, but I know about Antonio Brown.
You're arguably the best wide receiver in football, and you're unemployed right now. Like,
dude,
that's the same example, right? It doesn't matter how good John Mayer is if he
dick.
was a jerk, right? Yeah. So it's interesting you bring that up, though. So all right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Okay. We've talked about some real serious stuff.
Yes.
Give us something that like just stands out from the road, right? With either of the groups, or even if it's with your current group, whatever, you know.
Okay.
That just is the standout moment so far of your career so far. Like,
okay, I've got two.
Okay,
they're both
of them.
Funny moments.
All right.
So in Nashville, there's a tradition when you're on tour. One of the bands, whether it be the opening band or the headlining band, will prank one of the other bands, and nobody ever knows who it's going to be. You just plan it amongst yourselves. And so we decided on the bus one night that we were going to prank the opening band that was on tour with us. And this is not as deep as we were just.
Oh no, that's the point. Yeah.
So we were talking about what can we do, and the artist goes, dude, somebody should definitely go out on stage in their underwear, like during their set. And I was like, I'll do it. I'm in. And so the more we talked and the more we drank, the more it became, he should go out in an adult diaper, and that's it. Like, that's no shirt, no nothing, and an adult diaper. I have a picture. I'll send you a picture of it.
Which group was this?
This was with Drake White.
Okay.
This was with, it was country, so it was a little easier to get away with.
I expect this like with a heavy metal or something like that, right?
It's country music.
Some of them are half dressed going out there now anyway, right? So okay, country music and a diaper. Okay.
And a diaper. And so we did, and I mean, this was earlier this year, and people still refer to me. I'm on tour with a different artist right now, and people still know me as the diaper guy. Like, people have pictures on their phone of me in a diaper on stage with this guy. I'm like, I've never seen you at a show. How did you get, like, it's amazing. And so it's been like a funny.
Did it go viral? Like, did people like post a lot?
Sort of, yeah, like with all the fans and everything, because a lot of the same fans.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let you get to the second one real quick, but I have a quick question.
Yeah.
And it's actually because, given the exposure you've had, right? You would expect, and maybe this goes back to the whole happiness over, you know, like chasing the dollar or just like the attention, right? You probably could be a very big influencer on social media just off of the relationships you had, the circumstances you've had. You probably could have become a very heavily followed person on social media, and it doesn't seem like that's what you're after. No. And is that true to assume?
Yes, okay. That's absolutely true.
Okay,
yeah.
And then do you think that is well, probably not then. I was going to say, like, you know, you were talking about like the different opportunities in business and all forming off relationships. I know that I've formed very unlikely relationships through social media.
Same.
So do you think there's ever a time where maybe you're missing out on something?
Yes.
Through social media? Okay.
And the reason I say yes is because my wife is so good at social media management. Like, she grew a page from 0 followers to like 22,000 followers in a year.
Which platform is that, if you don't mind me asking?
It's her Instagram.
Okay.
It's her Instagram page. And I consider her an influencer because of the way we live. We live in a tiny house. And she started a page called Fifth Wheel Living. Shameless plug.
No way. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Please, yeah. No way. So you guys live in a tiny house. We got plenty of questions about that. Okay.
So she started that page. She's done really well with that. And I've always said I've never wanted to be an artist. I've never wanted to be. I enjoy my, you know, depending on what gig you're on, my hour to 2 hours in the spotlight every night, and I enjoy walking off stage and having nobody know who I am.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that maybe eventually it could become a part of what I do. Yeah, I think it will at some point, just because at this point it's unavoidable. Like you can use it to do so much good.
So much, right?
And
it's just so funny to witness, right? I've got tons of people who really haven't, and I don't want to belittle them in any way, but really haven't done anything yet. Hope to, but are like trying to grab every follower and every friend like that they can. And but again, like I said, it lines up with your values. It lines up with what we were talking about earlier. And perhaps like attention and money can be put on the same platform here, because that's what we're talking about with social media. Yet, you're not looking for all of the attention.
No,
you're looking for the happiness.
Well,
and that's really cool to see, by the way. I just want to tell you that, like, I think like looking at, like, especially like the first couple of guests for the Xtra Mile podcast. It's definitely been really cool to see how humble you are with everything that you've gone through, seen, and accomplished.
I've been knocked down enough times to stay humble. I mean,
definitely, right?
It's one of those things where, we've all been there, and even after touring with some of the greatest artists that I've ever had the opportunity to tour with, I have had trouble paying bills. I've had trouble making ends meet at times. Sure. Not asking for sympathy, because we're doing just fine. But there's been moments where we've been like, man, I don't know where our electric bill is going to come from. We got a $600 electric bill I don't know how to pay. And I mean, people go through that, and some people will take that and just say, oh, well, game over. I'm done. I've given it everything. And some people will say, all right, I can learn from that, and I would rather have just enough money in my bank account to cover my bills, put a little food on my table, and buy a little popcorn for the movie we're going to watch, than have $1 million in my bank and never have my wife next to me, never be able to sit down on the couch and watch a movie with her, never spend time with my dogs, come here and visit friends. That's what's so different about the country world that is different about pop, is they're so family oriented. When my grandfather passed, I had just walked off stage and got the phone call when I heard about it. And my mom called me. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. We walked off stage and we'd been talking, and I went down to the green room and saw a missed call from my mom, and I knew exactly what it was. And I called her back. She told me, and I broke down. I lost it. And the people that were there were those people that we were just talking about, that I walked out on stage and was messing around with in a diaper. The same exact guys came up and threw their arms around. Didn't say a word, because they knew there was nothing they could say. But that's the family, man. That's what the family's all about. And that I found more of a family in those people than I've ever found in pop music. Not saying that it doesn't exist there.
Right, sure.
But I'm saying it's so much harder to find.
And regardless, those are the relationships that we're pursuing, right?
Yes.
That's the kind of relationship we're pursuing. Somebody that can smile and laugh with us, right? And bring us joy in those moments, and bring us support when we don't have the strength or the courage to be able to keep smiling and laughing, right?
I remember the first time I realized that. Like, I picked up on that, like, this is a real relationship, was when I was touring with, I started playing for that gospel artist in Nashville when I first moved there. And the guys that I was touring with, I absolutely loved those guys. I still love them to pieces. And they've all moved on. They're doing great things now. But I remember the day we got back from a 4-day run on a bus. And we'd all been together for 4 days on a bus, playing the crappiest venues. Like, it was like a really rough weekend. And we all got back. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning. And me and the other guitar player said, dude, let's go get coffee. And we just hopped in the car and went and got coffee together after 4 days on the road together. And it was like, I realized, I was like, this is a real relationship. Yeah. And we sat and had a great conversation and then went home. And it was like somebody that you can, go grab a cup of coffee with after you've spent 4 agonizing days on the road with. That's a real relationship. And so that's what I've sought out, is like people that, I know not every relationship is going to be like that.
Right.
People are going to get on my wife gets on my nerves. I get on her nerves, and I spend every day with her.
Yeah.
But
especially in a tiny house, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, seeking out those relationships where you can just, it's just, you don't have to put anything on. You don't have to be fake for them. You don't have to put on for them. All you got to do is just be yourself, and they're going to love you for that.
That's right.
And that's it, dude.
gosh, that's so good. All right, we do got to wrap it up, or else we'd probably sit here and talk all day. We'd sit here and talk all day. One of the things I think that you should definitely do, and the reason is I think you're going to have fun with it. This is what I think. So you're familiar with TikTok?
Yes.
Yeah. So
my wife just got into TikTok.
Okay. So the reason I think you could have a lot of fun with it is because it is such a musical platform, right? Because it came from Musical.ly, it evolved to TikTok. I think you could have a ton of fun with it, and like also get before some people that even if, and this is the other side of this, right? Like sometimes we don't want the attention, but we have to remember that somebody watching could get a huge piece of contribution from the little bit of a message that you might have at the end of one of your videos, right?
Yeah.
So, so with that being said, right, I want you to, somebody who's strumming their first guitar strings, or maybe they've been playing the drums for 5 years, and they're aspiring to do something great. What's your piece of advice for them, and just, what would help them keep going?
Well, man, the best advice I ever got, and this advice is not for everybody, was when I told my dad I was going to drop out of college and pursue music. He told me, he said, "I support you, but I hope you're ready to be broke for a few years." I was like, okay. That was a college student. A first-time student, man, is like, it's gonna hurt, but your fingers are gonna hurt. But once those calluses come in, it will be the best feeling in the world when you can sit down and play your little girlfriend you guys a song on the first time through, man. It'll be the best feeling in the world. It's one of those things that if you're passionate about it, it'll grow. If you're not, it won't. And I'm not gonna blame anybody for that. And that was one of those things, man. It's just guitar for me was something I was passionate about, and it happened to bloom into a career, thank God. And you never know. Like, I know I had students that I taught that I was so bummed, and I'm like, they were like, we don't want to take lessons anymore, and I'm like, you're so good, you are so good, and they're like, well, we're doing other things and sports, and I'm like, all right, just promise me you won't stop playing, even if you don't take lessons, just don't stop playing. It's
interesting though, right? So like maybe that's their own self-awareness. I know they're probably young, but just like your dad said, hey, what do you mean you're dropping out of college, right? And he had that same conversation that you were about to have with that artist.
Exactly,
and
man.
saying, hey, what are you doing? Don't do this. At that level of self-awareness, which I give you, hats off to you for having that level of self-awareness, right, while going to college, because a lot of people don't, right? A lot of people go to college, then get a job that they hate, and they spend years doing that before they finally realize to do something that they love.
Exactly.
That they could probably make more money at if they truly love it and could put the passion in that you suggested. Yeah. So there's a couple of little key takeaways that I definitely want to make sure don't go identified. And it was the moment that you were talking about where like you and your wife not having everything, but having the happiness, right? And I can tell you, me and my wife, we've been together for 17 years.
Wow.
This December 18th will be 17 years that her and I have been together.
Awesome.
We've been married, I don't want to mess this up, but it's 14 years.
You gotta get your tattoo.
December 30th. No, I think I'd pay more attention to that than she does. I don't understand the wall, but I can tell you, like, I remember being in the trailer park and not knowing how we were going to pay the next bill, right?
Yeah.
Or, whatever Comcast was coming or whoever the cable provider was coming to cut everything off. Yep. Electric was getting cut off. And so, but I also remember those being some of the happiest times of our lives, which also led me to make some decisions to get some of my time back, right?
Yes.
Like, that's if the people that are watching this video don't take anything else away, I just want them to clearly understand that this is not a act, right?
Yeah.
You're in the business of the show must go on, but this isn't a show. This is, if you are chasing anything but happiness, you are not doing it right.
Well, and that comes, and I know we're probably running out of time, but that comes back to, I had a conversation with a guy on the bus. I'm not going to say his name, Ange, but he's a great guy. Yeah. And we started talking, and he wouldn't have any problem with me mentioning this. He was talking about, he's young. I think he's 20, 21. He's brand new. He's guitar teching for us, doing a great job. Running merch, doing a great job. And he's talking about, dude, I could literally just be on the road 7 days a week, making bank. And like, I'm single, and I'm like, yeah, you are, and you probably could. And I think you should do that for a little bit. I said, but The longer you do that, man, the longer you're going to continue to chase the dollar. I said, and you're going to find yourself, for one, from taking the mental stability out of it, you're going to find yourself with an acquired taste that you can't afford anymore when it all comes down to it at the end of the day. Because when it's all said and done, I mean, dude, we're at the end of the day, we're going to take it with us. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so you're not going to be able to take it with you. Well, in the career field we're in, we're not going to become millionaires. We're not going to get rich doing it, you know?
Yeah. Not enough people are thinking about the funeral, though. No. Not enough people are thinking about, like, what will you have left behind when that day comes?
Absolutely.
And and will you, right, at that moment where it's all going to end, right? It's all coming to a close.
When that light's shutting out.
How many regrets are you going to have that you didn't spend more time with this person or smile more often?
Absolutely.
Or, like, that's the part of it that people don't focus enough on.
Absolutely.
All right, man. So listen, Devin, I love chatting with you. Two things I'm going to ask you. You talked about maybe having the audition video from
yes,
when you,
I'll see if I find it.
If you do, please either send us a link to it or upload or email it to me or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we'll create another link so that people could see that.
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of a cool connection.
I think I might have it saved on a Google Drive, so I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So we'll try to get that for you guys. One of the things that we like to end on is, you know, just kind of saying like, okay, whether we want to talk about just the pursuit of happiness over the pursuit of the cash, or we want to talk about like the family legacy, which I also think is a great point of this podcast, this episode today. How can we how can we go the extra mile? And so basically what I want to challenge anybody that's viewing, and I'm sure you can agree with this, is if there's something that you're doing today that you're not happy with doing. I'm looking at all these cameras. Which one should I be looking at, Chris? That one over there. Okay. If you are doing something today that you are not happy with doing, right? Find a way, right, to do the thing that you love to do and chase the happiness. Once you get there, you are going to probably have to put a lot of miles on the extra mile. You're going to have to put a lot of time in on the extra mile to make it work, right? Because it's not going to be easy, like Devin said. Put the time in. If you're passionate about it, it will come, but you're going to have to work hard for it. You're going to have to be willing to put the work in.
Yeah.
Chase those dreams, though. Right?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
And then the last thing I want to say is give us a little bit of social, like you have an Instagram.
I do.
You go ahead and mention the tiny house one too. I don't care.
Oh, okay. So
this way you guys can get in contact with Devin. You can find him on social media and follow him after this.
My personal Instagram is dev_trout, and it's not a big it's not verified or anything. It's just my personal Instagram. My wife's is fifth_wheel_living, fifth wheel living, and it's all about our tiny home. And we do live in a trailer park, but by choice. It's so funny, man. People mention, some people mention that, and then they're like, "You live in a trailer park?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's awesome." I'm like, but if you guys want to check that out, she's done a great job. I've just done the work. she's done all the decorating and all that good stuff. So if you guys want to check that out and reach out on Instagram, I love to talk. Cool. So, whatever.
Awesome. The honeydew list is always long for you guys, even
always.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to the second episode of the Xtra Mile podcast. If you haven't subscribed, definitely click the link below to get subscribed to the channel and make sure that you guys are on the list and getting notified for everything that's coming out through the Xtra Mile podcast. And Devin, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It was an absolute blast having you on.
Absolutely.
And we'll connect soon and hopefully get that link for you guys.
Heck yeah.